genesis moment, pardon me, was not a grand plan. It was kind of an accident. Usually the best ones are. And I was actually new to town. And my background, I'm interested in like community building projects. And I met this guy, Ben Sanders, and he also was new to town. And we had connected somehow. He said, hey, I'm doing this event. We're looking at this thing called a Makerspace. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
This got started with a bunch of users and members and citizens that were just so excited about the idea of getting together and creating an idea and take it to the next level, but doing it with other people.
Hey, Whitehorse, there's this idea called Makerspace. Here's what it is. Here's some cool people doing cool stuff. What do we think about that? Oh, and there's free pizza. And we thought we'd get lucky for 30 people. And I don't know how many times we had to reorder pizza because I think about 230 people showed up.
I don't think anyone really knew what, who was going to be into it, how many people were going to come out. And I think all of us were really surprised at how many people just were like, I want into that, or I want to help with that, and it just grew. Every idea attracted people into the space.
Originally, we were just all volunteers, and we were just passionate about this idea of having a space where people could come together, share skills, tools, and get to explore that all together, bounce ideas off each other.
Well, clearly there was interest. So if that was the genesis, the first step was like a bunch of people saying, well, what do we do with this? We know people like this, what do we do with it? So it was really just a series of brainstorming meetings. How do you start something? We were looking at a bunch of places to just get a space. We figured, you know what? We do need to do some planning. We need to ask those big questions, but let's just get a space and figure it out. So there was this space on Industrial Road across from the Weenie Wagon. We didn't even really know what we were looking for, but it was space. And we moved in, and that was the Makerspace.
The maker movement appeals to me because it's kind of that DIY approach to things. So especially in a commodified world where it's really quick and easy to buy something that's mass-produced and can be fairly cheap, it sort of throws that a bit out the door and puts the impetus on the member or whoever it is to make that thing instead.
You don't need to own your own tools. In fact, most of us are never going to buy a $30,000 laser cutter. So what if you could have access to it when you needed it? But what we learned, and this kind of is what we tried to create, is actually what's more valuable isn't just the space and the tools, but the conditions or community of people who want to also build things as well. So where did CoSpace, the co-working space, come from? For better, for worse, the motley crew, and it really was a motley crew of people, said, you know what, there's this other really cool thing going on in other communities. It's called co-working. It's similar to a makerspace where you're creating the conditions for people to make things, but co-working is very much more about ideas. So sure enough, a bunch of people sort of not broke off, but took the energy at Yukonstruct and started this idea of CoSpace. Looked at a bunch of locations, found the cheapest one, and we were on Strickland on the second story there, and just bootstrapped it.
So I've been consulting for about 10 years. I was just telling a friend, I used to put a file box in the back of my car. That was my office. And then CoSpace popped up, and I had some friends that were connected to it. They had a beer o'clock on that Friday. Within 24 hours, I felt exactly like I was at home. It was a place where there were people like me, meaning self-employed, no fixed address for business, working remotely, potentially clients either in Whitehorse or the territory, or nowhere in the Yukon at all, but somewhere else in Canada or the world. The idea of low rate to be a member of a community with access to boardrooms and free coffee and Wi-Fi, groovy music, and then from there came workshop space and collaborating and facilitators doing thought-provoking workshop.
How we came to this NorthLight Innovation Hub is really interesting. We had two spaces. We had a space in the industrial area for our makerspace and a space on Strickland Street for CoSpace. And those two programs just growing really fast. Lots of uptake, lots of ideas, and we were running out of space really quickly. Part of our strategic plan in 2016 was to look for a bigger space, and we really wanted to bring the two together. So we began about a year and a half ago, so early in 2017, looking for a space. Where could we find a space that would be big enough to bring us in? We looked around for different ideas and different spaces we could find. We put out a call, and ultimately Northern Vision Development answered that call, and we started talking about what was this old grocery store on 2nd Avenue that had been empty for a really long time. So together with NVD, Yukon government, and the Canadian government, we put this plan together, and we signed a lease in January 1st, 2018 and began renovating the old Super Value to turn it into this innovation hub. So we're in the kitchen of CoSpace. We've got a variety of different ways for entrepreneurs to come in here. Some real light things are hot desking. You pay a monthly fee. You sit down where there's an available seat and open up your computer and get to work.
Yeah, it's pretty casual but serious in a sense. Like, people are committed to what they're doing and definitely have their heads down and working hard on their stuff, but there's always someone or a group of people who are chatting and exchanging ideas. And everyone's putting their heads together, and there definitely is that vibe of, you know, people at desks exchanging thoughts and ideas.
I work here, I'm self-employed, and so what does a day in the life look like? Well, I still have a bit of a home office, but I come here essentially 9 to 5. The reason I do is for a couple. First of all is I get more work done. Because there's something about, like, when you're in a public space and if you're going to your Facebook, if you feel like other people are working, you're less likely to do that. But the biggest thing, and I know this sounds Pollyanna, but it really is that community piece, and that is that sense of collaboration. It's the coffee pot thing, it's the water cooler thing, and I was meeting up with Steven and we were bouncing around ideas, and along the short, we're like, wait a minute, I have something you need, you have something I need, let's team up, and now we're building something.
We have a couple other levels we get into. We have dedicated desks where you pay a little more, you've got your own monitor and locking cabinet, and you can keep your desk. And then we go all the way up to some micro offices, so real small offices where, you know, individuals or teams can't have a closing door if they're doing lots of sales calls or they have some supplies they want to keep.
Briskita started 3 years ago, 2015, so it was discussion with my co-founders, they're based in Toronto, and it was really this whole idea around why do we not have the same access to performance measurement in cross-country skiing that we have in pretty much all other endurance sports. So the advantage of being associated with Yukonstruct and CoSpace for us has been everything from just the connections, to be able to meet with and talk with other startups to get kind of inspiration there. We can quickly run over to the 3D printer or the laser cutter, try something out. We had everything from our prototyping through Yukonstruct. We were able to do some element of rapid prototyping, you know, to the point where our mechanical engineer in Toronto, he doesn't have access to the same sort of tools, sort of facility at the kind of rate that we can.
I'm Neil, this is Jayden and Dave. We make up Outpost 31, and we're here at the NorthLight Innovation Hub. We're filmmakers and media artists. One of the most innovative things we're working on is we do 360 and VR content, particularly with 360. Being able to bring people to locations and navigate around real-world locations in an immersive way where you don't actually have to spend the thousands of dollars to fly someone to a remote mine in northern Yukon. So instead, you can have a client or a shareholder come by an office and they can toss on
any VR lab anywhere with the data and just sit down at a desk, put on the VR goggles or in a space, and all of a sudden you can transport to the Yukon. The issue is that you won't wear this for 2 hours, but it's great to create small little stories and experience them in a limited amount of time. It's not replacing any kind of medium, it's actually creating a whole new genre of storytelling, which is great for us, and it's actually really fun to play within this because you create an immersive experience. To create that inside of this environment is incredibly scary and real, and like for science fiction and visual effects and technology, like it's so cool to transport you into, for instance, Star Wars. You can feel like you're a Jedi. You can literally grab this and it becomes a sword and you're a Jedi all of a sudden. Like, that is powerful, you know, and we're looking forward to developing content inside of that environment.
Launchspace is our entrepreneur programming arm, and that's something that we provide to the members in the space, but also to citizens and public across the Yukon. So Launchspace provides a number of different things. One is business services. So if you're a new entrepreneur, you've got some questions, you don't really know much about how to register a business or what you're not thinking about, you can come in and get an intake with us, and we'll connect you with the resources and the people that are going to help you move.
So within Launchspace, there are also business programs. Essentially, it's helping expose the entrepreneur, the ideation person in the ideation stage, essentially to get to where they're going. So pitch nights, practice your pitch, show your pitch off, get exposure with potential investors. The Rolf and Marg Hogan Entrepreneur Speaker Series is essentially entrepreneurs or people from the community that want to hear the story of how it was to go on that entrepreneurial journey. However, one of the pieces that we want to really highlight as much as a successful side of entrepreneurism is the fact that it's super trivial. There are going to be ups and major downs throughout the career, so we want to celebrate also this idea of failure. And through failure, we're going to be launching the idea of fuck-up nights. So nights where people get together, 3 minutes, 3 to 4 people, 7 minutes each, and they tell about their most utter blunders and the biggest failures they've had, and it's a laugh out loud, throw your head back type of event where essentially we're celebrating that this is a culture of both successes and failures, and this hub is a place where you can have both of those and be championed.
This is our metal shop. This is really exciting. This is way bigger than our old shed that we had. And this is where all the metal work is done. We've got a whole variety of equipment. We have some traditional equipment like MIG and TIG welders, drill presses, metal band saws, big workbenches. But we've got some different technology metal equipment as well. Far in the back here is our CNC plasma cutter. So like a laser cutter, it's a computer numeric control, so you can take a logo or an image, a 2D image, and it'll use a plasma stream and cut it through up to a ½ inch of steel. Welcome to the home hardware wood shop. Most of this stuff is sort of traditional industrial type wood shop things. We've got a 20-inch planer and the finished planer. We've got belt and drum sanders. We've got jointers, chop saws, sanding tables. Most of that stuff that's needed for semi-industrial wood shop work. We also have some technology-driven equipment like our CNC router, and a CNC router is just like the laser cutter and the 3D printer, but essentially has a router bit. So you can take a computer file and essentially print that through a router into a piece of wood, and it does 2D and 3D routers.
By bringing the community together, it's what kind of builds the momentum for stuff. So people having access to different equipment that they might not otherwise touch. So someone who's into carpentry might end up, doing a little bit of CNC or laser on their work. So it kind of opens up doors for people, but it also facilitates like that push to do something a little bit differently. Is trying to really make it accessible to people that might not have the skills or the confidence to come in. And we're definitely working on that. Like some of the equipment's very intimidating, especially in the wood shop, because it's industrial grade, there's really fast spinning blades, and it's dangerous and powerful. But our whole hope is that anyone can walk in, we can do an orientation with them, and then they feel somewhat comfortable going in and using the machines on their own. But there's also a really good community of support here too.
Volunteer, a mentor, a teacher, a site moderator. One of the reasons why I decided to take a space here is I wanted to be in the space, to be around people, and hoping that the arts community part of it builds a little bit more. Like in the things that I make, I love to incorporate found things. That's sort of something that excites me. It directs a lot of the things that I build. It's a challenging thing for me because it's hard to be completely comfortable with bringing the high-tech stuff together with the sort of more free traditional techniques. And I like to think this is an example of a box that I designed on the laser cutter. It's just a simple box. I'm known for making lots of different boxes with lids and all sorts of things, but then I did a finger joint and it hangs on the wall, and then I painted the front of it, and then I did this is ink drawing. And then I've got this interesting system that I'm sort of experimenting with all these different hanging boxes with different attachments. It's and then I'll do that for a while, and then I'll get another idea and go in another direction. Okay, I've kind of become quite attached to the laser cutter. I really can't imagine not having access to a laser cutter in my life. So right from the very beginning, I found it to be an awesome tool because I combine work with paint, and then you can draw, you can import things that you've done in different mediums. It's got so much possibilities. I have not yet, after 4 years of playing with this laser cutter, I've not run out of ideas.
And just make a sign here that says high voltage for, we're gonna put above the plasma cutter. For me to know what size, there's a gradation here along in the program here, and these numbers are in inches, and they correspond to numbers that are on the laser cutter. This laser cutter here, it's got a bunch of different options. You can cut, you can engrave. The way it differentiates between those two different settings is it has different amounts of pulses of light that are coming out of it at a different speed. These are different percentages of black that you can use as a guideline for how dark you want it when you engrave it. The different amounts of pulses of light per minute would give you different darkness, and that the program will do it. But if it just has a really solid beam of light, then it'll just totally cut out a piece straight out of the material. Pull that down like that. I'm going to try and change this yellow to be white. Just engraves that. Here at Yukonstruct, we offer courses and 101s all the time throughout the month, as well as we have a self-study guide, because it's really not that hard to get into something like this. All right, so start it up here.
Part of the success of this messy story is that there is no grand plan. Now, of course, we have to have some sense of direction, and we're figuring that out, and I have some thoughts. But I think what's more important, according to Peter Drucker, and I agree, is that if you create the conditions where people want to be here, and they believe in the potential here, and there's trust, people are willing to go.
I love the community. I love the access to tools, the possibilities, bringing ideas and tools together to create new things. Like, I just never really know what I'm going to end up doing here and who's going to be here and what they're going to bring. And
we're growing our own ecosystem by virtue of sharing. There's a lot of growth opportunity for here. More young people, more women entrepreneurs, for sure a way to take this experience and share it with the communities. More Aboriginal entrepreneurship support and development. I'm in a space where we're talking about learning and continual improvement and challenge all the time, and I'm inspired to want that for myself and for how I do that in my work. That's a byproduct that I wouldn't have guessed when I paid my first membership.
The future is intensifying those collisions of people and ideas to try new things and failing. And failure is important, and failure is fine, but learning from it and producing some new businesses. And maybe I'll leave it with this. If there's a kid in school who's looking at the suite of options of what he wants to do when he grows up or when she grows up, instead of asking the question of, I want to be this profession or this profession, maybe we'll ask the question, what's the impact I want to have on the world? Because I think that's really the question we should all be asking. What do I want to achieve? What do I want to contribute? And then say, well, I could be a doctor, I could be a teacher, or maybe I'll be an entrepreneur, and that's how I'm going to have my impact on the world. And I think if we see more of that, then we've done our job.